On Christmas Day in 2024, the oil tanker Eagle S crossed the Gulf of Finland. Above the waterline, the voyage looked ordinary enough. The ship was carrying Russian petroleum toward the eastern Mediterranean. It sailed under the flag of the Cook Islands. Its ownership arrangements passed through the usual corporate fog surrounding the fleet that moves sanctioned Russian oil. Below the waterline, something was wrong. The ship appears to have continued sailing while dragging its anchor across the seabed. Investigators later found a long trail beneath its route. Along that path lay Estlink 2, an electrical connection between Finland and Estonia. The cable failed. Several communications cables were damaged as well. Finnish authorities boarded the Eagle S. The vessel was brought into Finnish waters. Equipment associated with the ship was seized. What had begun as a quiet passage through the Baltic suddenly looked like a lesson in 21st century coercion. There was no missile launch. No bomber crossed NATO airspace. No soldier appeared at a border checkpoint. A merchant vessel may have damaged infrastructure connecting two NATO members using an anchor. That is the problem beneath today's episode. Western countries speak about cyberspace as if it floats somewhere above geography. We call our computing services the cloud. We describe data as though it were weightless. Yet the political and commercial life of the Atlantic Alliance depends upon glass fibers resting on the ocean floor. Those fibers can be damaged by fishing equipment. They can be severed by an anchor. The same physical vulnerability that produces innocent accidents can provide cover for deliberate attack. The result is a form of coercion well suited to an age of strategic ambiguity. An adversary can impose costs without presenting NATO with a clean target for retaliation. The victim sees the damage immediately. Proving intent can take months. My estimate is that undersea cables are becoming one of the principal testing grounds for conflict below the threshold of war. The decisive contest will concern endurance. Western states must be able to detect suspicious activity, reroute traffic, and restore damaged links before disruption becomes political paralysis. A cable does not need to be impossible to cut. It needs to be unrewarding to cut. Begin with the physical object. A modern submarine communications cable is roughly the width of a garden hose across much of its deep ocean route. At its center sit strands of optical fiber. Those strands carry pulses of light. Protective layers surround them. Near shore, where anchors pose a greater danger, the cable receives heavier armor and may be buried beneath the seabed. The technology appears delicate because it is delicate. Its strength comes from the network built around it. Suppose a defense analyst in Germany retrieves imagery stored in a data center in Virginia. The request leaves the analyst building through a terrestrial network. It reaches a cable landing station near the European coast. From there, the request passes through optical equipment that places it aboard a submarine cable. Repeaters installed along the route amplify the signal. The request reaches North America in a fraction of a second. It then continues overland to the data center. A satellite might assist some part of the wider service. The ocean crossing itself will usually occur through fiber. That distinction matters. Satellites are indispensable for military communications and service to remote areas. They still carry only a small fraction of intercontinental digital traffic. Submarine cables handle the overwhelming share because fiber offers immense capacity with lower latency. The internet therefore has geography. It has ports of entry. It has narrow corridors. Telegeography's 2026 map depicts 694 cable systems that are active or planned, reaching 1,893 landing stations. That sounds like abundant redundancy. Across the whole network, it is. At a particular coastline, abundance can shrink quickly. A landing station collects the capacity of cables that may have crossed thousands of miles of ocean. It supplies power to the submerged equipment. It connects the submarine system to networks on land. This creates an inversion in the security problem. The cable is hard to watch because it is long. The landing point is easier to watch because it is fixed, yet its concentration makes it valuable. Consider Ireland. The country hosts data centers serving much of Europe. It also sits at the western edge of the continent, facing the Atlantic routes that reach North America. Its role has grown because geography placed it close to the routes linking European users with American computing infrastructure. That relationship gives Ireland commercial weight. It creates exposure as well. The concern is not that one severed line would remove Ireland from the internet. Network operators can reroute traffic. The concern appears when several faults affect the same geographic corridor while operators are already managing high demand. Available capacity falls. Traffic moves onto longer routes. Latency rises. Networks become more expensive to operate. Services configured around ordinary conditions begin behaving in peculiar ways. The first visible sign may be mundane. A cloud application takes longer to respond. A financial transaction times out. A video call stutters. Behind that small inconvenience sits a queue forming inside the network. Rerouting is often described as though data simply chooses another road. The analogy is incomplete. A highway can contain empty lanes. It can also be crowded before the detour begins. When traffic moves away from a damaged cable, it must enter capacity owned by another operator. Commercial agreements shape that movement. Technical configurations determine whether it happens automatically. Security policies can restrict which routes are acceptable. The network bends. It does not possess infinite elasticity. This is why counting cables can mislead. Resilience depends upon where those cables land and whether they share terrestrial connections. It also depends upon the availability of repair ships. A fault must first be located. A vessel must then sail to the site with the correct cable aboard. The crew retrieves the damaged ends from the seabed, joins them, tests the connection, and lowers the repaired section back into place. Weather can halt the operation. Permits can slow it. A second fault elsewhere can draw away the nearest qualified ship. That repair fleet is small when measured against the importance of the infrastructure it serves. A campaign aimed at Western communications would therefore seek to overwhelm restoration capacity rather than destroy the entire network. The attacker does not need to empty the ocean of cables. He needs to create faults faster than the defender can clear them. This brings us back to the anchor. Around 200 submarine cable faults occur during an ordinary year. Most are not acts of war. Fishing activity remains a common cause. Anchors account for many others. Earthquakes can damage multiple lines at once. Underwater landslides can carry broken cable sections away from their original positions. Equipment fails because all machinery eventually develops opinions about its owner. The frequency of accidents gives a saboteur cover. An anchor dragged across a cable produces physical evidence. Investigators may identify the vessel that passed overhead. They can inspect the anchor. They can reconstruct a route from tracking data. Intent remains harder to establish. A captain can claim mechanical failure. The crew may insist that nobody realized the anchor had dropped. Ownership may pass through companies registered in several jurisdictions. The ship's flag state may have little ability to investigate. Its cargo may connect it to a sanctioned trade without proving that a government ordered the damage. This distinction between evidence of action and evidence of intent forms the center of the deterrence problem. Return to the Eagle S. On December 25, 2024, S-Link 2 stopped transmitting power. Finnish authorities suspected that the Eagle S had damaged it by dragging an anchor. The same episode affected communications lines in the Gulf of Finland. The physical method was crude. Its strategic effect was refined. Estonia and Finland did not lose electrical power. Other connections remained available. The damaged link still reduced reserve capacity during winter. It forced operators to rely more heavily on alternate generation and transmission. The event also compelled governments to answer an uncomfortable question. Was this a maritime accident committed by a poorly maintained tanker, or was the tanker functioning as an instrument of Russian pressure? The ship's association with Russia's shadow fleet deepened suspicion. Such vessels move sanctioned petroleum through obscure ownership structures. They often sail under permissive flags. Maintenance standards can be uncertain. That same opacity creates an attractive platform for sabotage. A state does not need to commission a specialized naval vessel if an old tanker can cross the target area without attracting immediate military attention. The government can benefit from the damage while denying that it directed the voyage. The ambiguity is asymmetric. Finland had to investigate. NATO had to consider the implications for collective security. Cable operators had to repair the damage. Insurance companies had to determine liability. The actor responsible, if the damage was deliberate, needed only to create doubt. This is where undersea sabotage resembles a cyber intrusion. Both attacks exploit uncertainty about origin and purpose. Both force the defender to separate technical facts from political judgment. Both can be routed through infrastructure belonging to uninvolved parties. A network defender may know that malicious code entered a system from a server in another country. That fact does not identify who controlled the operation. In the same way, a maritime investigator may know that an anchor crossed a cable beneath a vessel. That fact does not reveal who ordered the anchor dropped. The resemblance goes deeper. An operation can combine the two domains. A cable landing station contains power systems and network management equipment. It relies upon software for monitoring. Remote access allows technicians to maintain that equipment. An intruder who compromises those systems may gain insight into traffic conditions. He could learn which routes carry the greatest load. He might observe the moment when a physical fault forces traffic onto alternate paths. This knowledge would make a second disruption more damaging. Suppose an anchor severs a cable in the Baltic. Operators begin rerouting traffic through another landing point. Hours later, malicious activity interferes with equipment at that alternate site. The physical event now looks different. It is no longer a solitary cut. It becomes one part of a coordinated operation against network recovery. Attribution also becomes more difficult. Maritime authorities investigate the vessel. Cybersecurity teams investigate the intrusion. The relevant evidence enters separate national systems. Each organization sees a different fragment. The adversary operates across the seams between them. NATO responded to the Baltic incidents by launching Baltic Sentry in January 2025. The activity increased the alliance's military presence in the region. Ships and aircraft began watching key areas more closely. NATO later tested uncrewed systems for persistent surveillance of undersea infrastructure. This was a sound response. Presence changes an attacker's calculation. A vessel behaving suspiciously faces a greater chance of detection. Yet detection does not settle attribution. A patrol aircraft can observe a ship slowing over a cable corridor. Maritime tracking data may show an unusual course. Sonar can reveal an anchor trail after the fact. Political leaders must still decide whether the behavior was reckless or deliberate. The closer an operation resembles an ordinary accident, the harder that decision becomes. An attacker can tune his conduct to remain inside the fog. This means Western deterrence cannot rest entirely upon threatened punishment. Punishment requires confidence in attribution. It also requires political agreement on proportionality. Resilience works under weaker assumptions. If traffic reroutes quickly, the attack produces little disruption. If a repair ship reaches the site promptly, the damage does not last. If investigators combine maritime data with cyber evidence, ambiguity begins to narrow. The defender does not need perfect knowledge before acting. He can restore the service while the argument over responsibility continues. That changes the contest. The attacker may still cut the cable. He gains less from doing so. Now consider a more serious crisis. Tension between NATO and Russia is rising. Allied forces are moving toward Northern Europe. American commanders are transmitting deployment orders across commercial networks. Civilian cloud providers are supporting parts of the military logistics system. No war has been declared. A bulk carrier approaches a known cable corridor in the North Atlantic. Its tracking system begins reporting intermittent positions. The vessel changes speed. Several hours later, a major transatlantic cable fails. The internet continues to function. Traffic moves to alternate systems. Public statements describe a technical incident. Then the real pressure begins. The alternate routes carry the additional load. Latency increases between European users and American data centers. Network operators adjust configurations to control congestion. Some lower priority traffic is delayed. Military command systems usually receive protected service. Yet military operations depend upon a wider commercial environment. Contractors exchange engineering data. Transportation firms receive movement instructions. Personnel access identity services hosted outside the local network. The military network may remain intact while the civilian machinery around it begins to grind. That is the desired effect. A sophisticated cable campaign would probably avoid a spectacular internet blackout. Such an outcome would remove ambiguity and invite a forceful response. A better operation would create intermittent disruption at a moment when delay carries strategic value. The adversary seeks friction. A cargo manifest arrives late. Authentication fails during a shift change. A commercial provider pauses access because automated systems interpret the unusual routing as suspicious. Each problem appears manageable when viewed alone. Together, they slow mobilization. This is one reason the phrase "internet kill switch" gives the wrong picture. The network's strength lies in its capacity to route around damage. An attacker facing that design will target the process of adaptation. He will look for the alternate path. If one Atlantic cable fails, traffic may move south. That movement creates a new concentration. A second fault along the receiving corridor can produce effects greater than the sum of the two cuts. The timing matters more than the raw number of damaged cables. This is similar to striking a bridge after traffic has been diverted onto it. The first disruption changes the network. The second attack exploits the changed condition. Cable operators understand these dependencies within their own systems. Governments often possess only a partial view because much of the infrastructure is privately owned. Commercial secrecy further restricts the details available outside trusted channels. An adversary may study those dependencies through espionage. Cable route information is widely available at a general level. Precise engineering data is more restricted. Network traffic patterns can be inferred through long observation. A compromised operator could provide a sharper picture. The cyber campaign may therefore begin months before a ship enters the target area. Attackers could steal maintenance schedules. They might identify which repair vessel serves the region. They could learn how quickly a landing station detects a fault. When the physical disruption occurs, it would rest upon prior digital reconnaissance. This makes the defense problem larger than maritime patrol. The cable owner must protect internal systems. Governments need channels through which companies can share unusual activity without placing proprietary data into a public forum. NATO must also understand that cable protection is a campaign of continuity. A frigate cannot sit above every submerged route. The ocean is too large. The fleet has other missions. The purpose of surveillance is therefore to concentrate attention where risk is rising. A vessel loitering above a corridor should receive scrutiny. A tracking outage becomes more meaningful when it coincides with unusual network activity. Neither indicator proves hostile intent. Their combination may justify intervention before damage occurs. That judgment will be uncomfortable. Governments risk harassing innocent shipping. A commercial master may have a legitimate mechanical problem. The adversary counts on that hesitation. Clear legal authorities can reduce it. Maritime agencies need predefined conditions for boarding or diverting vessels suspected of threatening infrastructure. Evidence standards should be established before the crisis. Waiting until the cable fails gives the attacker the opening move. The larger danger lies in strategic paralysis rather than technical collapse. A government may know that hostile activity is occurring. It may lack evidence strong enough for public accusation. Allies can agree that the incident is suspicious while disagreeing over the response. That gap between shared suspicion and collective action is where coercion thrives. For defense leaders, the cable problem belongs inside operational planning. A command should know which commercial routes support its theater logistics. It should understand what happens when those routes fail. Exercises need to include degraded transatlantic connectivity at the same moment forces are moving. The relevant question is not whether a protected military circuit survives. The question is whether the whole deployment process continues when commercial services become unreliable. This requires testing under realistic conditions. A tabletop exercise can declare that a cable has failed. A stronger test forces participants to work through delayed access to the cloud service they use for transportation coordination. The inconvenience reveals dependencies that architecture diagrams often hide. For commercial owners, security begins before the cable reaches the water. Landing stations need physical protection. Their management networks require strict access controls. Operators should watch for digital reconnaissance against maintenance systems. Companies also need trusted mechanisms for sharing anomalies with governments. A strange login attempt may look minor to one operator. It becomes more significant if maritime authorities are watching a vessel near that company's cable. The public and private pictures must meet somewhere. European governments have begun constructing that meeting place. The European Union adopted its action plan on cable security in February 2025. The plan covers prevention, detection, repair, and deterrence. NATO has strengthened cooperation with cable operators through its critical undersea infrastructure network. These efforts recognize the proper problem. The infrastructure is commercially owned, while its failure carries national consequences. The remaining weakness is repair capacity. Patrols attract attention because warships are visible. Repair ships are less majestic. They look like industrial vessels engaged in patient work. Yet, they determine whether sabotage produces a strategic result. Europe needs access to vessels capable of restoring damaged systems during a crisis. Those ships need protected supply chains for cable and specialist equipment. Crews must be able to enter contested waters without waiting for improvised security arrangements. This is where resilience becomes deterrence. An adversary considering a cable attack will estimate the likely duration of the damage. If the answer is several weeks, the operation may appear worthwhile. If alternate capacity absorbs the traffic and repair begins within days, The same attack becomes an expensive way to announce hostile intent. Policy should therefore measure recovery time as carefully as cable count. Insurance rules matter as well. Operators should not face financial penalties for sharing threat information rapidly. Governments may need agreements that preserve repair access during a wider maritime crisis. None of this makes cables invulnerable. That standard is fantasy wearing a hard hat. The achievable goal is continuity. Western systems should continue functioning while investigators determine what happened. The undersea cable contest will probably intensify because it offers a rare combination of access and ambiguity. Commercial ships travel near critical routes every day. Faults already occur. Ownership can be concealed behind distant registries. A state seeking to apply pressure can hide its hand inside the background noise of maritime commerce. We should expect more probing behavior. The clearest warning may be a vessel moving strangely over a cable route. The more dangerous indicator would be that movement appearing alongside digital reconnaissance against the cable operator. Watch the repair fleet as well. If specialist vessels become concentrated in one region, another region becomes more exposed. If governments begin placing repair capacity under security guarantees, they are preparing for a world in which restoration may occur during active confrontation. NATO's Baltic Sentry marks a serious change in posture. The alliance has accepted that the seabed is part of the contested operating environment. The next step is to connect maritime surveillance with cyber defense and commercial recovery. For more than a century, strategists have studied sea lanes because commerce depends upon ships reaching ports. The digital age did not abolish that geography. It placed another set of routes beneath the ships. The West's financial exchanges pass through them. Its military coordination relies upon them. Much of its daily political life assumes that they will remain available. These routes consist of glass fiber laid across mud and rock. That fact should inspire wonder. It should also inspire sobriety. An anchor can break the glass. Strategy determines whether anything important breaks with it. This has been Gene Botkin with Orbital Estimate. End transmission.